a system that shows you are a just and wise ruler, chosen by the gods to bring order to the land. Picture this. You're walking through the streets of ancient Babylon, nearly 4,000 years ago. The city is buzzing, a hub of trade, culture, and power. But what holds this sprawling metropolis together? What stops it from collapsing into chaos? It's not just strong walls or a powerful army. It's a set of rules carved into a giant stone pillar for everyone to see. A code so influential, its echoes can be heard in our own legal systems today. This is the story of the Code of Hammurabi, one of the most important legal documents in human history. And trust me, it's way more dramatic and fascinating than your high school textbook ever let on. So let's set the stage. We're in Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, around 1792 BCE. A new king has just ascended the throne of Babylon. His name is Hammurabi. When he came to power, Babylon was just one of many competing city-states in the region. Think of it like a neighborhood with a bunch of powerful families all vying for control. Hammurabi was ambitious. He wasn't content with just being another local ruler. He wanted to build an empire. Over the next few decades, through a brilliant mix of military campaigns and shrewd diplomacy, he did just that. He conquered his rivals like Larsa, Ishnona, and Mari, and unified Mesopotamia under Babylonian rule. Suddenly, he was the king of a vast and diverse empire, with people from different cultures, speaking different languages, and having different local customs. Now, imagine you're Hammurabi. You've just built this massive empire. What's your biggest challenge? It's not just fending off external enemies. It's keeping the peace inside. You have all these different groups of people who used to be enemies, now living under your rule. How do you ensure they trade fairly? How do you settle disputes about property? What happens when a builder's shoddy work causes a house to collapse? You need a single, clear, and universal set of laws that applies to everyone. A system that shows you are a just and wise ruler, chosen by the gods to bring order to the land. This wasn't just about punishment. It was a massive public relations project to legitimize his reign. He needed to prove that his rule meant stability and justice for all. And so, the Code of Hammurabi was born. To make sure no one could plead ignorance, Hammurabi had his code carved onto a massive stone stele. And when I say massive, I mean it. This thing is a 7.5-foot tall, or 2.25 meter, pillar of black diorite. It's imposing, dark, and polished. It was designed to be a permanent, unchangeable monument to his justice. It wasn't hidden away in a palace. It was placed in a public area, likely in a temple dedicated to the sun god Shamash, who was also the god of justice. The idea was that anyone, from a farmer to a merchant, could come and see the laws that governed their lives. At the very top of this stele, there's an incredible carving. It shows Hammurabi standing before the seated god Shamash. Shamash is handing Hammurabi the tools of a ruler, a ring, and a scepter, symbolizing that the laws themselves are a divine gift. This image is pure political genius. It's a visual declaration that these aren't just Hammurabi's rules. They are the laws of the gods, delivered through him. It shouts, to disobey these laws is to disobey the gods themselves. Talk about a powerful message. The stele we know best was discovered in 1901 by French archaeologists, not in Babylon, but in the ancient city of Susa in modern-day Iran. It had been carted off as war booty by an Elamite king a few hundred years after Hammurabi's reign. Today, it's one of the star attractions at the Louvre Museum in Paris, where millions of people go to see it every year. But this probably wasn't the only copy. It's likely that similar steles were erected in major cities all across the Babylonian Empire, ensuring the king's justice was visible everywhere. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What do these laws actually say? The code consists of 282 laws, written in the Akkadian language using cuneiform script, pressed into clay tablets before being carved on the stele. It's organized into groups covering topics like property, trade, family, and criminal justice. It's not a law code in the modern sense, with abstract legal principles. Instead, it's a list of specific cases. If this happens, then this is the consequence. And the consequences could be severe. The guiding principle for many of the laws is something you've probably heard of. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This concept is known as lex talionis, the law of retaliation. For example, Law 196 states, if a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. Law 200 says, if a man knock out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked out. It sounds brutal, and it was. But it also represented a step forward. It limited retribution. Instead of a family feud that could escalate into a cycle of revenge killings, the punishment was meant to be a direct and equivalent response to the crime. Let's look at some other examples that show how detailed this code was. What if you hired a builder and his work was subpar? The code has you covered. Law 229 is chilling. If a builder builds a house for someone and is not constructed properly, and the house which he built falls in and kills its owner, then that builder shall be put to death. If the owner's son was killed, then the builder's son would be put to death. This shows how seriously they took professional responsibility. There was no room for cutting corners in ancient Babylon. The laws on theft were also incredibly strict. Law 6 states, if a man steals the property of a temple or of the court, he shall be put to death, and also the one who receives the stolen thing from him shall be put to death. There was no messing around. Justice was swift and often final. But it wasn't all about death and mutilation. Many offenses were punished with fines. For instance, if you were a farmer who was negligent and your irrigation canals flooded your neighbor's field, you had to compensate them for the lost crops. This was about restoring balance and making the victim whole again. Now, here's where things get really interesting and reveal a lot about Babylonian society. Justice wasn't the same for everyone. The punishments you received depended heavily on your social status. Babylonian society was rigidly stratified into 3 main classes. At the top were the Ewilim, the upper class of nobles, priests, and wealthy landowners. In the middle were the Mushkinim, the commoners' free citizens, but of a lower rank, like farmers, artisans, and merchants. And at the bottom were the Wardom, the slaves, who were considered property. The Code of Hammurabi makes these distinctions crystal clear. Let's go back to that eye for an eye law. If a nobleman poked out the eye of another nobleman, he would lose his own eye. But what if a nobleman poked out the eye of a commoner? According to Law 198, he would simply have to pay a fine of 1 mina of silver. No lost eye. And if a nobleman poked out the eye of a slave, the fine was even smaller. He just had to pay half of the slave's value to the slave's owner. This shows that while the code aimed for a kind of justice, it was a justice that reinforced the existing social hierarchy. The life and body of a nobleman were valued far more than the life and body of a commoner or a slave. It was a system designed to maintain the power structure, with the elite at the top, protected by both their wealth and the law itself. This principle applied across the board. The fees you paid to a doctor, for example, were different depending on your class. A doctor who successfully healed a nobleman got paid 10 shekels of silver. For a commoner, it was 5 shekels. And for a slave, just 2 shekels. The law touched every single aspect of life, and it always knew your place in society. But despite its harshness and class-based structure, the Code of Hammurabi also contained some surprisingly progressive elements, especially for its time. It offered protections for the vulnerable in society, which was a revolutionary idea. Hammurabi presents himself in the Code's prologue as a shepherd to his people, one who was chosen to make justice appear in the land, to destroy the evil and the wicked, that the strong might not oppress the weak. And some of the laws really do reflect this. For example, There were laws dealing with family matters and protecting women. A wife who was divorced without just cause was entitled to get her dowry back. Law 138 states that if a man wishes to divorce his wife, who has not borne him sons, he must give her an amount of silver equal to her original bride price, and also return the dowry she brought from her father's house. This provided her with some financial security, preventing her from being cast out with nothing. There were also laws against false accusations. Law 1 states that if a man accuses another of a capital crime, but cannot prove it, the accuser himself shall be put to death. This was a powerful deterrent against people using the legal system to settle personal vendettas. The code also established a form of minimum wage for certain laborers. For example, it set the yearly wage for a field laborer or a herdsman at 8 gur of corn. It regulated the fees that could be charged for services, like renting a boat or an ox. These regulations were meant to prevent exploitation and ensure a degree of fairness in the economy. So while we might focus on the brutal eye for an eye punishments, it's crucial to remember that the code also tried to create a stable society where contracts were honored, work was compensated, and the powerless had at least some recourse against the powerful. It wasn't a perfect system by any means, but it was a monumental attempt to govern a complex society through written, public law rather than the arbitrary whims of a ruler. So, what happened to the Code of Hammurabi? Did it just disappear when his empire fell? Not at all. Its legacy is immense. For centuries after Hammurabi's reign, Babylonian scribes continued to copy and study the code. It became a foundational text, a model for what a legal system should look like. Its influence spread throughout the ancient Near East. You can see echoes of its principles in later legal systems. The laws of the Hittite and Assyrian empires, for example, show clear parallels. More famously, there are striking similarities between the Code of Hammurabi and the laws found in the Hebrew Bible, particularly in the book of Exodus. The eye for an eye principle, laws about what to do if your ox gores a person, rules about theft, many of these have direct counterparts in Hammurabi's code. Now, this doesn't mean the Bible just copied Hammurabi. It more likely means that both legal traditions emerged from a shared cultural and legal environment in the ancient Near East. Hammurabi's code was part of a long tradition of lawmaking in Mesopotamia, and its principles were in the very air that people breathed for over 1,000 years. The code's ultimate legacy is the very idea it represents, that law should be written down, public, and applied to everyone, even if it does so unequally. It established the principle that the state, not private individuals, is the final arbiter of justice. It's the idea that a society should be governed by laws, not by men. This is the foundation of the rule of law, a concept that is absolutely central to modern legal systems around the world. Every time you sign a contract, every time you enter a courtroom, you are in a space that was shaped in some distant way by the ideas chiseled into that black stone pillar nearly 4,000 years ago. From the bustling streets of ancient Babylon to the halls of the Louvre Museum, the Code of Hammurabi remains a powerful testament to one ruler's ambition to create order out of chaos. It's a snapshot of a complex society with its rigid hierarchies and its surprising concern for the vulnerable. It's brutal, it's brilliant, and it fundamentally changed our understanding of justice. So the next time you hear the phrase, an eye for an eye, remember it's not just a cliche. It's a direct link to our deep past, a reminder of humanity's long and often difficult journey toward creating a just and orderly world. Thanks so much for watching. What do you think is the most surprising law in Hammurabi's code? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from history. See you next time